Cheers, friends. Hello, patrons. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. Bueno. Kwanzaa. Happy Prince Shotoku Day. That's what we used to call it at the Mount Baldy Zen Center. For some reason, my teacher didn't quite wish to celebrate the birth of Christ. So there was apparently a figure in Japanese folklore or history, I'm not entirely sure, named Prince Shotoku. My memory is a little fuzzy on this. I've been drinking, it's green tea, but anyways, at the monastery we would finish up our Rohatsu retreat, which was the very intense winter retreat which preceded a ceremony honoring the Buddha's enlightenment. Then a few days later, we would celebrate Christmas at the monastery. Be like white rice, miso soup, tofu. At least we didn't have to do formal meals. But that life is thoroughly behind me now. And like you, I'm a lay person, living the lay life, which is to say I am no longer expressing my spiritual life formally through Zen practice at a monastery. At a Zen Buddhist monastery, or at least the one that I went to, it was understood that you did not get to hang your hat up there forever. The path led through the front gate of the monastery, up the hill into the Zendo. Onto each officer cushion in the Zendo. You were the Jikijitsu, or the father figure, sternly commanding the Zendo and the meditators to sally forth with what we called Genki, which is, I guess, a Japanese word for chutzpah. You were the shoji, who was the caring mother figure of the Zendo. I shouldn't use these gendered terms because they're not really appropriate anymore, but they were the terms we used at the monastery. The shoji was considered to be the person who cares for the Zendo, the grandmother, your grandfatherly figure who makes tea for people, who helps them with their constipation. There was this guy at the monastery. I just remembered his name, but I'm not going to say it. Dave, let's say. And he was very, very good-looking guy. He had this wavy, long hair, and it was silver. And he had a full head of hair, even though he was, like in his 50s. And he had these beautiful, piercing green eyes. And he was the vainest mofo on the planet. And I remember one time when I was shoji, he came into the cabin. He didn't even knock. He just came into the cabin where I was sleeping and woke me up from my nap, pulled out a chair, sat down in it, and held out his hand and informed me that as shoji it was my job to take care of his hangnail. So my ass got out of bed from my nap, went into the shoji cabinet, got the fingernail clippers, and took care of this little princeling's hangnail. That was the kind of job you had to do as the shoji. As tenzo, you cooked the meals. As densu, you took care of the sutra hall and performed the chanting rituals and other ceremonies, funeral ceremonies, etc. And then you were head monk. And then you were pretty happy with yourself. You were the boss. And the higher you rose, as it were, within the monastic hierarchy, the less respect you received from our teacher until he finally made you a priest, at which point it was your job to go out and start your own temple and get out of his hair. You had to move out of dad's basement and get your own job now. And Roshi, my teacher, was usually pretty unsparing with Oshos who stuck around. I mean, I watched him absolutely verbally flay an older Osho who kind of dug in like an ingrown fingernail into one of our Zen temples and wouldn't leave when my teacher wanted him to move on. So, path was not to the monastery. The path was through the monastery and out into the world to share what you learned with people who might need it. And it's a path that's very it's within the Buddhist tradition, right? We have that moment when Shakyamuni Buddha achieves enlightenment, looking at the North Star, clears his plate of all the messy, rotten scraps, becomes a Buddha, right? And what happens? Well, actually, if I'm remembering correctly, what happens is he goes out there and he tries to preach his Dharma, and people and a few of his old ascetic friends are like, "You crazy? Like, what? You've been smoking some of that Vedantic hashish under the Bodhi tree, friend." And they didn't believe him. But at some point, after having his opening, his Dai or great opening, the Buddha was like, this can't be shared. And yet I gotta try. I gotta go back out into the world. I have to return to the human world. This is my form. I am an upright ape standing on feet with arms and opposable thumbs, with an extremely complex human brain, with appetites, with a prefrontal cortex, with a limbic system, with all the karma that comes by being born into the body of a human animal. I can't turn my back on that. I can't sit under the Bodhi tree for the rest of my life. And in my case, I can't stay at the monastery for the rest of my life. Got to go back out into the world. So now I'm out here like everybody else, living a human life. And I didn't start a temple in the Rinzai tradition because my teacher died before I could leave the temple. And he left a question mark in his wake. In his death, there was a big question mark. He left a scandal behind that killed his reputation. He did not name a successor in his lineage, and that killed his lineage. And his body died. His body was killed. And in many ways, our Sangha died. Even though there's still some community left, some semblance of a community, when you lose a teacher of that much importance to a community, you don't replace that. And that's just a fact. And so there's a big question mark, and I didn't want to go start a temple with pretending that I'm like a lineage holder in this Rinzai tradition. I mean, my teacher was a Rinzai Zen monk from the Myoshinji lineage who became a Roshi, and then he died. And I don't have such a strong connection to like the stuff that's going on in Japan and Kyoto where my teacher came from. So I was kind of bereft and I didn't know what I was going to do for a long time. And one of the things that I did was I started a Patreon page, and I started posting these videos on Patreon, and I started writing some essays and blog posts for Patreon, and I started doing some Sunday sits for Patreon. And you know what? As much as I complain about the internet, God bless the internet, because I have experienced, knock on wood, the absolute best aspects of the internet. Patreon has been a godsend, a Buddha send. It's people I feel who are maybe in a similar position to I am. They want to be lightly touched by a community, but not thoroughly ensconced in the cult-like aspects sometimes that American Buddhist / Zen groups / Vedanta groups / mindfulness groups can be. I mean, sometimes it's like you're either all in or all out in some of these communities, and you want to sit with people, you want to join a community, but then you got dues, there's politics, there's the teacher, when you're in a spiritual community, like the teachers have to hold the space. They have to put on a show. I mean, I'm sorry, but if you've got a board of directors and you've got property and you've got dues and you've got electric bills and you've got a group of people sitting in front of you, looking at you, giving you those eyes. Yeah, I'm telling you, man, those eyes that sometimes you get from people like, I mean, it does something to you. And I saw a lot of senior Oshos in my community almost break themselves publicly so that they wouldn't have to carry those expectations of their teacher, of their students. It's a sticky wicket is what I'm saying. And I have been blessed by Patreon. I'm blessed that the people there support me financially. It means something when you put your money into the internet and it comes my way. It helps pay my electric bills. It helps. There's a war next door in Ukraine, and we get a lot of our gas and oil from Russia here in Europe, where I live. And electricity prices are through the roof still, and Patriot helps pay that. It's tangible how you're helping me. So I'm deeply, deeply grateful for that, and that's what this video is about. My gratitude for y'all. On a closing remark, because one should try and offer something of use, I learned something doing these videos for Patriot. I learned something really, really important. I told myself in the beginning, you will not be able to do this if it's not fun. So that's your only goal, is to have fun. That's your only goal, because if it's not fun, you will look at this camera and you will freak the out, because this is not my bailiwick. It's not my wheelhouse, performing for a camera. I never liked giving public Dharma talks in the Zendo, and I'm not hugely in love with putting myself out there on the internet. I decided it's gotta be fun. It's just gotta be fun, or you're not gonna do it. And that means you're going to do it poorly. Okay? Don't try and make a fancy video. Don't try and be, like all these guys on the internet who make such good videos and they make video essays. You're not going to do that. Here's what I learned. What I learned was sometimes I did try very, very hard to make very, very good videos. I mean, I would have my computer in front of me and I would have a teleprompter program going and I would have a script and I would have the thing, edited, and I would have jokes and punchlines. Those videos were fine. Other videos, I would be like, oh, criminy, I've got to crap something out in the next 20 minutes because I need to put a video up by noon. And those videos would be fine. I learned something kind of important making these videos. It didn't really matter, how big my dream was for a video or kind of how hard I tried. The videos always came out about the same. They always come out about the same. So that allowed me to realize, bro, you're marginally talented at best, and you have a limited number of things to say and a quite truncated means of expression for saying them. So work with what you've got, be who you are. Don't set huge goals for yourself that you're not going to be able to achieve. Just get up there and do your job. And speak your piece and speak your truth. And within that framework, within your limitations, maybe some beautiful things can happen. And I think that this is kind of in many ways a secret for a human life. Within our truncated circumstances, within our humble means, within our flawed characters and our broken bodies and our weird karmas, that's the fence around us. Don't peek over your fence into other people's lawns. You've got your bag of goods, and it's good. You can work with them and have fun with them and experience joy within your life and within your circumstances. It's all about coming alive within and waking up inside, your own circumstances and your own life, not hoping for and dreaming about better circumstances and a better life to the point where it blinds you to what's right in front of you. Like your life is the good-looking guy you're talking to at a party, right? Don't look over his shoulder to see if there's anybody else in the room, because then your life's gonna walk on by and get somebody else or something like that. I don't know. I'm caffeine drunk on my highly strong green tea. What I'm gonna do now is offer a thanks to my patrons, and I'm going to read all of your names. We'll share a moment of silence for those patrons who have left and are no longer on my list of patrons, but I'm going to read the list of patrons, and I'm going to show you some fun stuff that I filmed for you recently here in Vienna, some Christmassy type stuff. David Guy, Virginia Phillip, Josh Eds, Max, Eric Gobelbecker, Carlo Siegrist, Nicholas Hobner, Sarah Marshall, Ethan Lee, Mike Wright, Tom Collingwood, B, Stephanie, Christian Veith, Antonio Egia. Okay, here's the part where I apologize when I mispronounce people's names, and I do apologize. I just sometimes can't get these names correctly pronounced. I apologize. Nick Martin Candy, Stephanie Krausick, Brian Doe, Michael Beatty, Judy Conti, Curtis White, Brian Mitchell, Craig Nelson, Larry Cook, Piotr Ostazowski, Noel Farmer, Ryan Brown, Paul Engel, Bart King, Gabriel Lucero, Joel Stoy, Christopher Pothier, Dana Ayla, Brent Brody, Swami Vasudevyananda, Stephanie Squibb, Arnaldo Pereira, Danny Frumenzi, George Tarnay, John Jegan Griffin Attil, Ingrid Vander Poel, David Savage, Alejandra Gomez, Peter Rantasa, Jesse Neal, Christopher Aiden, Tina Chasley, Jason Poole, Gail, Andrew Rahauser, Danny Parker, Willie Heineman, Neil Taylor, Ina Horch, Jeff Fedorcu, Jeannie Desi, Adrian, Cliff Cousin, Robert Piper, Psycho, Dante, Lars Morten Fuglevic, Mark Noble, Espen Ore, Jamie Doobie, Mike, Bill Evans, Kendall Pig, Elliot Starks, Kyle Smith, Paul Wilcox, Jim Nowick, Andrew, Jane O'Day, Devin Selby, Corey Warner, Bran Flake, Stephen Gee, Kelly Catron, Andrew Cude, Ian Smith, Angel R. Puente, Mark, Andrew Leonards, Andreas, Daniel Pack, Paolo Klautau, Smoggy Rob, Jennifer Ball, Jonathan W. Johnson, Don Heffington, Jacques Rabier, Jamie, Matthew G. Mintonen, Kale, Dustin Frost, David Cudlip, David Sheely, Adam Hayes, Mimi, Graham Simpkins, Eric Zimmer, John, John F. Meyer Jr., Greg Hooper, Adam Nogrady, John May, Clifford Collins, Annie Taib, Philip Weichselgartner, Edie, Tony Stewart, Dax J. Kramer, Stephen Rides, Brian Stubbs, Stephen Beckley, Thegis Debus, Chris A., Navit Kaur Heneghan, James Buell, Jeffrey Zacko Smith, Leah Sanford, Greg, John Spalding, Mario, Steve Hughes, Dennis Valentine, Dave, Wolfgang Sellner, Matt Kelly, Francis Bahai, Brad Warner, Eric Hernandez, David Guy, Peggy Kersoulis, Nina Snow, Diana Shane. Thank you. I'm not sure why my voice became so solemn while I was reading these. Perhaps I felt like I was reading the names of the dead. However, I am reading the names of those who have kept me living. Thank you, and happy holidays.